Okay, in this video, we're going to go through the settings of how to set up your field service management for your company. All right, so from the main screen here, we're going to click on the settings tab. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so get your notepad out and get ready to take notes here. So first thing I want you to know is I do have this field service management open in Chrome as well as Internet Explorer. And the only reason I have that there is because I want to be able to show you where, when we go through these settings, where it actually appears when, in the process of creating work orders. So we're going to start on the side with the work order settings and just start with priorities. Now your priorities here are, urgent, non-urgent, emergency, and all this does is basically shows you on a per work order basis when it would be considered overdue. So if someone doesn't pick it up within 2 hours, if we set a work order to be emergency and it doesn't get picked up within 2 hours, it's going to send back to the office, the main office, a red flag that this emergency work order hasn't been picked up yet. Okay, you can decide which is the default, of course, and then you can also edit and say how many hours. So let's say emergency is 4 hours. Here, nope, my numlock is off. There we go. Say save. Okay, so now within 4 hours if it hasn't been picked up. So where this screen shows up on your work order, when we go to create a new work order, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Do a search and choose ABC, or let's choose San Antonio Zoo and say next. Okay, we're going to pick our problems real quick and let me show you where this shows up. Okay, say next. So right here on the dispatching screen, this is where it's going to show up for you, where your priority is. You're going to set your priority here, okay? Emergency work orders do come across on the phone separate in a separate column. So you've got your pending work orders and then you would have your emergency work orders as a separate line item. Right, so you have your skills here as well. The skills are customizable entirely for your business. It's just a free type field. So I can edit this and say this is class A electrician, save it, all right? And where this appears again also is on the dispatching board, and it's just a way for you, we don't want to refresh this, but it's just a way for you to segregate out so you can say, I want to see only the people, my technicians who have the skill of master electrician, which I don't have any. So, okay. So you'd be able to see your list filtered out by skill. So you can only send out the people who've got that, master electrician skill on this work order. Okay, you have your cancel reasons here, so you can add some additional cancel reasons or you can edit the existing ones. Okay, a lot of people ask me too if you can delete any of these. You can't, but you can rename them. So if you only want to have 2 or 3, you can just rename these and then call the rest, do not use or something like that. So cancel reasons are reasons, of course, why you're canceling a work order. It's just a way to run reports so you can see why you canceled each work order. On hold reasons. It's telling me I didn't finish editing that. It's the same thing as cancel reasons. You can have on hold reason, waiting for approval, waiting for parts. So you can put a work order on hold, okay, and it'll just be flagged on the dispatch board there. You can have flag reasons. So if you flag a work order, some of my clients use this as, hey, I need parts on this work order. Can you please get me some parts on this? I need approval for something. It's placed on hold. Invoice authorization needs to happen. So you can have a whole bunch of different flag reasons. Repair codes. This is used at the end. Once you complete a work order, you can choose your repair category and then what repair code was happening under that repair category. So it's just, again, extra fields for being able to filter reports out. The repair codes, I say set up last because you have so many different fields you can already fill in that you can set categories for. And then this is just, again, you want to make sure that if there's extra on top of, work order types and customer types and all these different things, this is an extra field you can filter out reports by. So I always set repair codes last with my clients. All right, so we have our work order types. So you have basic work order types and your custom work order types. So basic are ones that come preset. We have our PM work order type here, and it's a PM is my category, abbreviation, and then my description. I can also add some additional work order types, and where that shows up on is when you are actually creating the work order here. Okay, so if I go to previous here, and it'll show me on my screen what is my work order type. Okay. Alert settings. This is where you decide how you want the customer to be alerted or you to be alerted on emergency work and how often you want it to be alerted. So you can send it in plain text. Most people like to send it in plain text because if you are having it flow through to your phone or something like that, then you want it to be not too much data going across. Okay. You can say what email address you want it to come from. So you can change this to say dispatch@mycompany.com. How many alerts do you want to send? 5 to any single individual, and then it sends to someone else. How often do you want to send alerts? Do you want to send non-emergency alerts? Do you want to send emergency alerts after hours or only to logged in users? Okay. Do you want to send appointment reminders? How often before? Also overdue reminders. How often before the work order becomes overdue? Okay, so you can set up your alert settings here. We do have our print templates. Okay, so you can come in here and preview your templates that you have. So I have my work order print template here. Okay. If I want to change this, I can change it to be the tech copy, customer without invoice copy. So I can change my template here. I can't customize it though entirely. If you need to have your templates customized, you do have to deal with Corrigo on that. We have our dispatch board settings. So you decide what shows up on the dispatch board. Do you want the work order status? Do you want the zip code? Maybe I don't. So I'm going to say no on this. Okay. Do you want to know the creation, the due by, PO number? I mean, there's a lot of fields here that you can add, including your custom fields that you add to your program. And where that shows up is on the dispatch board itself. If we have here our, see it pop up. If on the dispatch board, if we have our, let's click on this one. There we go. If what we have on here for our work orders, what information we want to show. So if I highlight over, click too many buttons, it's making my computer think. So if I highlight over a work order, let's find one. Okay, so it tells me what information I want to show here on the screen when I highlight over the dispatch board work order. Okay, so you can see I have the work order type, the promised arrival time, all that information on there. Okay, work order flow. This is where we decide, do we even want to use those repair categories and repair codes? Sometimes when a technician is marking a job as completed, you don't want to have that extra setting that they have to fill out a repair code and repair category, so you can turn that off here. And then if you are just starting out, you can have work order back dates. So if you want to enter some history, you can go in there and allow for backdating some work orders. Okay. We do have the ability to import some backdated work orders as well, but we do need to, it is at a fee. Okay. So if you're not allowing back ordered work dates, you want to leave that as no, or you can change it to yes. So those are our work order preferences. Those things I usually go through pretty quickly with my clients. You can change them at any time. You probably want to keep them pretty standard though, because the thing we want is for the people who are in the field to have standard responses. That way we can run reports more easily. So we're going to go in here now and go to our work zone. Okay. The work zone is for different time zones. If you use different time zones for your, like if you have somebody in Houston or Texas, and then you have somebody in California, you have different work zone times. So the different teams have settings as far as their time goes. So 8 o'clock in the morning in Texas, of course, is 6 o'clock in the morning in California. So they need to have their dispatch board be set up differently. Okay. Service teams, you can set up your service teams here. There are different service areas, so you can have a couple different service teams. And also you can come in here and decide who is a member of those service teams. Okay, and what work zone these service teams are part of. And then, of course, you can have dispatch centers as well. So you can have multiple dispatch center. Service teams can fall into that dispatch center. So we might have a different one in Texas versus in California. And you can edit which members come into that dispatch center as well here. Okay, so that's work zone. Now we have model your business. This is the most important, biggest part of setting up your field service management. Okay, so what this is, you have your service packages. Most of my clients use one service package. The reason for that is you can only assign one service package to the customer or job or site. Okay, so they can't have, so let's say you do electrical work and AC or HVAC work. Okay, you can't have one customer that has both service packages. So what you want to do is you want to put them under one service package and then go in and set the categories that show that electrical versus HVAC. Okay, so that's something to be very clear on. You can only assign one package to customers. So the reason you'd have multiple service packages is if you have two completely separate customers. So maybe you have a residential package and a commercial package. And if it's a commercial customer, they're never going to use the same thing as the residential. That might be a good way to set up service packages. Okay, something to think about there. So I'm going to go ahead under my one service package that I have. I can edit it to rename it. So instead of that, I can just call it my services, and say save. Okay, so it's just a retype. Now if we're going to set service categories and services under that package. Okay, so this is the most important part because this is what shows up on every work order. So we have here our service category, common problems. Where that shows up is here under category. So under here, it shows me those service categories, common problems, installation, test, and then below that, it also shows me the equipment that this customer has assigned to it. Under each service category are services themselves. And the importance of filling these out is, of course, to be able to tell the technician what's going on. So we have some common problems. There's a burning smell. But then also to set a default priority, a default expected duration, and a default skill that goes with that service category or that service. So I'm going to add a new service category, and we're just going to say electric services. Okay, so it's going to add this. Again, notice that is free type. It does add a preset of other, it adds those to all of them just in case there's not something here that is what the customer is calling about, but it's not very common. So you don't want to create a new service for every single scenario. But if you have some kind of off-the-wall scenarios, you can just use the other. Okay, so you'd say electric services, other, and then you would be able to, on here, give a free type description of exactly what's going on. So we say we have electric services, so I'm going to add a new service under that service category. So we can say install surge protector. Okay, the priority for this is usually non-urgent. The expected time it takes is 30 minutes. And you have to have a certain skill for this. We can say Class A electrician and say add. Okay, so you can have the electrical services here. So now when I go in and I refresh this screen, okay, we're going to go ahead and refresh this from Internet Explorer, and I'm going to be able to, at that point, when I add my new work order, okay, When I refresh it, it's going to open up to the main screen again, but it tells me down here I have an unfinished work order. So I'm going to go ahead into that unfinished work order there. It'll pull it up. And now I'd be able to have my electrical services, my install surge protector, install in the garage, and my free type field. Okay. So that to me is the most important part of setting up your file, setting up and determining what are your categories and what are your individual services under those categories. All right. So then what you can also do here is you can have a equipment types. So these are different types of equipment that you actually service on people. Now you can keep track of this equipment on a per customer basis or per site basis to see what kind of equipment is there. And then also if you decide to do the service agreement module, which allows you to have automatic entry of work orders based on the schedule, monthly, quarterly, weekly, whatever it is, then you can put in here, a service agreement attached to this piece of equipment. Okay. So each equipment type you have entered in here. Under the equipment type, you can also set the services that you service on that equipment. So again, on this screen here, I have my equipment AC system. That's one of my equipment types. And these are the services that can be done to that piece of equipment. All right. So I'm going to set my services here. On there, I go into, again, same thing. I've got my new service checklist, and I can add additional things to this. Okay. Also on this screen, so I have here exposed wiring, loose connection. It looks the same as my other services that I have on the back screen, but this is services specific to the 110 volt piece of equipment that I service for this customer. In these, you can have descriptions as well. So I can say scheduled maintenance and it pre-fills in a description. On that, I can add here. It's going to pull up just a free type screen. I do have the ability to make it so it looks like it's a checklist. Check wiring. Turn off power, whatever the checklist that they're supposed to go through. So you can add this to that screen. So every time it pulls it up, that checklist will pull up. Now that doesn't mean that a technician, if they're entering it on their phone, can X off that they finished each of those, but at least it gives them the steps to go through if you want to enter those in there. Okay. Down below here, you can decide which attributes you wish to track for this piece of equipment. Condition, installation, manufacturer, model, serial number, tag number. Now these are the attributes that I have turned on. All right, now I'll get into that in just a second, but where to add additional attributes. But for this 110 volt piece of equipment, I do want to track the history of the condition, and I do want to keep the history there so I can pull up and see when we marked it as new, when we marked it as used. Okay, you can track the installation date, and then I don't want to track the manufacturer, model number, serial number, tag ID, because this doesn't have those. Okay, so you can decide what attributes you want to track on a per equipment basis. Now, if you decide, you go to attributes here to decide which attributes you actually want to have available. So I can add a new attribute here, say that it is let's just say this is usage. Okay, so keep historical, yes. Is it required, yes or no? I'm going to say no. What's the data type? It's a string, integer, phone number, date, whatever it is. So I'm going to say it is an integer and add it here. So now I have the usage tracking here so that I can, on my equipment, decide to choose one of the attributes as usage tracking. All right. So model your business again. That's the most important setup to me of all settings for field service. We're going to continue now into company. Okay, so you can set up custom fields here. Custom fields are free type fields. You can describe what kind of fields you want. Let's say we're going to add a new custom field for the site. All right, I'm going to add a new one, and it's going to say, reference. Let's just say, okay, and it's a string. It's 20 characters, and I'm going to add it here. Once I add it, I can go ahead down here and add a pick list. So I'm going to add a new choice to my pick list, and it will be type A, whatever our references are, type B. Okay. So again, where that shows up here is that it shows up under now our customers and under our individual sites for our customers. If I look at my individual site here, then I'll have the ability to enter that custom field, and it'll be a drop down. So here's my reference, and there's my type A, type B. Okay. So custom field, again, it's great. I like choosing pick lists instead of allowing people just to do free type, because that way you can run reports more easily off of that. If they can just free type in there, then that means, somebody might put type space A, or somebody might put type A with no space, and then running a report, they won't show up on the same report. Unless you just choose, show me everything that has type. Okay. Terminology. So this is where you set your term, the way that your company phrases things. Work zone, what do you call it? Sites, jobs, service locations. What do you call your customers? Tenants, clients, guests. What do you call your work orders? Maybe service orders. Repair categories and repair codes. What do you call those? For your services, do you call it a problem, a complaint, a task? Skills, specialties, trades. Terminology for dispatchers, service representatives maybe, or customer service representatives. For the site address or the service address, maybe job location, address. Your equipment and your categories, do you want to call them assets or equipment, or just categories? Your technicians, maybe call them service techs. Your teams, maintenance teams, work teams. Your dispatch centers, do you call them service centers instead? And then for your service agreements, maybe you call them preventive maintenance agreements or maintenance agreements instead of service agreements. So you can set up some different terminology that's custom for your business. Okay. It does have your subscription details in here. So what's the company name, address, what's the phone number, email, all this information flows through onto the work order. So also how many licenses you have, and the different modules that you have available. Okay. You can upload your logo here. So this is where we go in and upload our logos. You can choose which different document types you use. Okay. If you can use a picture, if you can have a signature attached, voice message, you can add additional document types as needed. The appearance here, so that starts out with a neutral color, but you can change it to standard color, for example. It just changes the color scheme on here. Some people like the colorful. I have a couple clients that use this. Okay, I tend to think it's a little distracting, but we're going to go back to neutral. Those nice calming blues. Landmarks, you can add some landmarks here. What these are they will show up on your dispatching map or your map when you look at putting, assigning clients or technicians out to different clients. My clients use this for if you have a fleet card, you might want to put a few of your gas station landmarks on there so you can tell a technician, you pull them up on a map, say, hey, you're closest to the one that's on 5th Street, not the one that's in Uptown. Also, you can add in here maybe different hardware stores that you have packages with or accounts with. Integration, we go into more in another video. This is when you set up your integration into QuickBooks Financial. And then also you have your class settings here, which is, do you use class tracking? Okay, and that's having to do with QuickBooks Financial. We go into that more in different videos too. You have your mobile settings. So what do you want to show when somebody pulls up their work order, my work? How do you want the information to show up? Emergency on top, rejected, completed. How do you want it to show up here? On primary work orders, when they open up the work orders on their phones, what information do you want to show here? Maybe you don't want to show due by or ETA. You don't use ETAs, so you can hide this and it comes off of their phone. Okay. If you are this is primary work order details, of course, if you're the primary on it. If you're not the primary, if you're secondary on the work order, it shows you what information do you want to show to the secondary. And then we have our device settings here. So on the device settings, how often do you want to update your GPS? I don't recommend doing it less than every 20 minutes because it is sending data across and your phone can run out of information. The data that's sent across to the mobile clients is text data, but even that, if you send it every 5 minutes, data back and forth, it's going to burn up your battery pretty quick. How often do you want to request data from the server? Okay. And then also, do you want to have the application start every time the device restarts? So if somebody turns off their phone and turns it back on, does it automatically log them into the system? Can be something that's a little bit dangerous there, because if they're out for the weekend and they, drop their phone and it resets itself, then it will clock them into the system when you start it up. Financial settings, okay, basic invoice settings. You can say, what are my, do I offer discounts? Yes or no? Do I charge sales tax? What is my most commonly used sales tax rate? And then do you want to default class to an invoice based on who's creating the invoice? So if Joey is a technician that works in residential, do you want it to default anytime Joey's working on an invoice, default to residential? Yes or no? Posting invoices here. Do you post invoices on the customer side or on the site? You have your sales tax items. Okay, so these are your sales tax items here, your groups, your codes, all this stuff really should be fixed in QuickBooks Financial first. However, you do have the ability to fix it in the Field Service Management here. You have your invoice status. What is the status of the invoice? So you can add your own custom status if you want to. So if you have, for example, you're creating sales orders in the field, not necessarily work orders, you can have a new invoice status called sales order so that we know that everything that goes there came from a salesperson versus coming from a technician. You have your price list. This is all your items that you sell. These are the types of items that you sell, what price list types you have. So you can have additional of those if you want. Okay, and this comes from QuickBooks Financial, so inventory, non-inventory services. You have your price list groups. No, I'm sorry, let me go back to the price list there. Underneath the price list, you have over here your actual items. So these are the items that come up from QuickBooks Financial, okay? So we can add additional items here. We can edit items on the fly here, or you can do it in QuickBooks Financial as well. Then you have groups, which are the same thing as groups in QuickBooks Financial. You have your print template. So which template do you want to use when you print an invoice? Customer sales status, copy with signature, office copy, okay? If you do take payments in the field, which payment types do you take here? And then if you take payments in the field and you use Go Payments, so you can connect to a merchant service account, a QuickBooks merchant service account. Continuing on, we're going to go to our customer settings. So you have your notification settings, deciding you can say every time we complete a work order, it sends a notification to my customer, or you can say every time we are, go en route to a order, it sends a note out to the customer, and what text to include in the message. So this is an automated message. Please find updated information below, and then you use a custom template there to send the information over to the customer. Okay. Probably don't want to overwhelm them by clicking all of these, but maybe one or two along the way. If you do use time cards in Field Service Management, here's where you set up those settings. If you don't see this time card drop down or this over here in the menu, you don't have the time card module turned on. So let's look at our workflow settings here. On a time card, is it punch in, punch out, like start shift, end shift? Okay. Do you want to track break time for technicians? Do you pay technicians for your break? Do you turn off GPS when not on shift? And then you also have this, so this is clock in, clock out, but then you also have the ability to track time on a work order basis. So they can only clock in on a per work order basis. Now the one thing with that there is it won't track time, of course, if they're not working on a work order. So if you pay them for idle time, you should create a work order for your company, like a customer for your company, and they can track idle time to that customer, which is just a generic customer for your company. Okay, do you want en route time tracked on your work orders? Yes or no? Okay. What happens if somebody works across midnight? So if they work from 10 to 2, do you want the time to be recorded on the previous day? So it shows them as working 4 hours on. So if we start on Saturday at 10 and we work until Sunday at 2 a.m., then the 4 hours there would be showing all of it on Saturday. Or you can say, put it either way to the day which has more hours, or you can say always push it forward to the next day. Okay, and then do you want to track classes on your time card records? So if you do track classes, I would suggest turning this on and saying yes, track my classes on my time card records. Okay, so once I say yes there, okay. Your time card period. Okay, so now is where we decide, is our time card weekly or semi-monthly? And then what is the start of my week? Setting up overtime rules here, so you can decide, is it a weekly overtime or is it daily overtime? So some states, this is based on where you have, your state law, labor laws. Daily in California, 8 hours a day. Weekly in Texas, 40 hours a week. We can also have combination rules here, so we're just going to stick with daily. So greater than 8 hours, and then when does it hit double time? Greater than 12 hours, okay? And if there's any special time, like on Sundays, you pay after 4 hours, you pay double time or overtime, something like that. And we're going to add some rounding rules in here. So do you round your time card hours, yes or no? So I'm going to say yes. I round it to the 15-minute mark and always round up. That's what's the most common, I assume, for people. Okay. We have our list view configuration here. So how do you want to show the time? Regular time plus overtime plus double time, second value, or you can have it here that the second value is your overtime and the first value is your non-overtime. So you can add that there. Okay. All right, this is where we do the time card reconciliation. Do you want to flag any time card that has overtime? Do you want to flag any time card that has double time? Flag time records that are more than maybe 10 hours at a time, shorter than 2 hours. Flag timesheets if work order time is less than half an hour or less than half of the shift time. So if a work order is 25 minutes, maybe you want to flag it if they worked an 8-hour day. Okay. You can also, it automatically flags overlapping time records. So if they check into 2 jobs at the same time and start work on the same time, it'll flag it that there's overlapping time records. All right. Now we have our service agreement settings. Okay, again, if you don't see this on your screen, it's because you don't have the service agreement module turned on. So our preventative maintenance settings here, this is just saying if you have a service agreement and that you have set up, how many days in advance do you want that work order to be entered into the system? So if you do monthly service agreements, for example, most of my clients who do this, we have it come in, we have it dated on the 1st, all of them are dated on the 1st, and they enter into the system 15 days in advance. And then that way, 15 days before the 1st of the month, I can go in and schedule out that month's worth of work orders. Okay. We also have our seasons settings. All right, what is our seasons? Because when you enter a work order, so check out that video, you can say, what does it mean, spring, summer, fall, winter? This is where you decide what that means. And then there's the work order network down here. And this is just a network. This is something that Corrigo has as a separate service. The work order network is kind of for larger companies that send work orders down into their local technicians that they work with or local companies that they work with. So large corporations have franchises in stores and individual spaces, and they use local help to filter their work orders. And so that's what the work order network is. So you don't have to worry about that for now. I know that was a lot. You might want to watch the video a couple times there, going through all the settings. Also be sure to pause the video and go through setting up your company while you're watching this video. But those are the settings for field service management.